Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Wild and the Whites podcast. All right, today we are going to do a podcast just giving you a brief update on hunting season and what's going on with it. Andrew here is going to keep me grounded and ask questions along the way in case
I'm going to do my best.
If I breeze over something like I probably did in the last episode that some newer hunters are like, what? My last update, please forgive me if any of those things happened. Yeah. So right now, I'm going to use a big word right now.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
2 syllables?
It's a 3-letter word, but it's a big word for hunters. We're not in the rut yet.
No rut.
It is October 9th, but what I am noticing is we're starting just barely to touch on what's referred to as the pre-rut.
Okay. So we've got that. I'm gonna ask it.
Yeah.
Because that's the big word.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's I'm pretty sure it's you got a bunch of horny guys running around the woods trying to chase
Accurate.
some beautiful whitetail.
Yes.
So
Yep, that's accurate.
that's nobody's ever explained it to me. It's just from hearing everybody talk about wait till the rut.
Yeah.
Well.
So the big thing with the rut, and I'll go into more details on this when we actually get there.
Okay.
Because I'll continue to do updates. But the big thing with the rut is that's when bucks just cruise and roam, and you can really run into them a lot easier. And they've got one thing on their mind.
Okay.
And that's it.
That one track mind is just taken over. So
Yeah. So they're a little bit
caution
more
is-
stupid than the rest of the year.
Gotcha.
Makes sense?
Yeah. I can appreciate
they
that.
might throw caution to the wind on certain things that they wouldn't normally.
Mm-hmm.
They would normally be a little bit afraid of, and when the rut hits, they're like, "Screw it."
Yep.
Yep.
What's that?
I smell someone. She's ready,
Nah.
and that's all they can think about.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the pre-rut is, to my understanding of it, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, but to my understanding of it, it's basically a time where bucks are starting to mark their territories for where they want to be with the ladies. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they don't want other bucks around. They want to figure out where all the ladies exactly are, line up those spots that they want to be, and then they want to kick the lesser bucks out, and they want to just have their own time with
Gotcha.
the ladies.
Okay.
So this is the time where bucks are probably not right now, but during the actual pre-rut when it really kicks off. We're starting to see it, and I'll describe why I know that we're starting to get into it just barely. But when it actually kicks off, that's when they're super aggressive. So that's when things like rattle antlers, grunting, snort wheezing type calls.
That more like testosterone.
Yeah, that's when those things can be utilized a lot better.
Okay.
Because early season they wouldn't really care because they're just looking at food. They're not really territorial yet.
Right.
And during the rut, yeah, you can still get some of that, but they really are just cued into the does so much. They're not really cued into other bucks as much as they are during the pre-rut. So the sign that you're looking for right now is fresh rubs on trees.
Okay.
Okay, so where they take their antlers and they actually remove bark off of the trees with their antlers. They're rubbing scent glands on those trees to kind of mark out where their territory is. Another big reason why they do rubs is to strengthen their neck muscles for fighting other bucks.
Gotcha.
So you'll see these rubs, and they're not going to be very far up off the ground, because to get their neck muscles engaged and start really building those neck muscles, they go down close to the ground, and they work their way up and down, up and down, up and down on those trees with their antlers rubbing the bark right off of them.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're thinking like a deer's back height and lower.
And lower. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're finding these marks on the trees, these rubs, and in the video, I can just go on Google and throw up a couple pictures of rubs or something. When you find these rubs, right now, it's someone that's feisty, right? He's starting to feel the change in the air. He knows that the rut's coming. He's starting to get that testosterone built up. He wants to start building his muscles. He wants to become that aggressive. He wants that alpha male. He wants to just be the guy that can get as many ladies as he possibly can. Okay. And that's going to involve fighting off other bucks, and that could just be being intimidating and scaring away other bucks. It doesn't necessarily mean fighting, right? So that's what you're looking for. The other thing is scrapes. So a scrape is, in my opinion, way better than a rub. Okay, so a scrape is where they take their hooves and they actually scrape out the ground. So you'll see all these freshly fallen leaves here, and then there'll be a dirt patch.
Okay.
That just looks like someone went, you know, like when your dog digs in the yard? That's basically what it looks like.
Okay, so if I've got a deer that's rubbing, why are they going to scrape?
Okay, so a scrape is way more of a communication device for deer than a rub is.
Okay.
A rub has more to do with like frustration, a little bit of territory, a little bit of that aspect of it. But scrapes, what they do when they clear out that ground is then they'll urinate in it and put their scent right into that scrape. And then there's always a branch right above it. Okay, and that branch is going to be typically about 3 to 5 feet up off the ground. And what they do with that branch is they'll start licking it and they'll start rubbing their antlers gently all over it. You'll see like if there's twigs coming off of that branch, sometimes you'll see like the small little ones are like bent off or broken off or something because they were moving their antlers through it. But all they're doing with that, they're not actually like creating a rub on it. Okay, what they're doing is just scenting it up. So basically it's a calling card of like, hey, I'm here, who else is here? It's like it's a complete communication device. So other bucks will come to scrapes and check them out to see they can, if 5 bucks urinate in a scrape, a buck that comes along can tell the difference between each one of those bucks' urine and tell that 5 different bucks have hit it and who they are, so that they know these guys are in the area too.
Okay.
And come the time where the rut is actually occurring, the does, when they're in heat, have been known to even urinate in scrapes too, with their urine that's got that hormone in it that says that I'm in heat, come get me, boys.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it really is a complete communication device for them to use in order to get an idea of who's out there, where they want to be, where are we at with things, and take an inventory of their life in that area and who else is in that area.
Cool.
So right now is the time where I'm just starting to see those scrapes. So right now is when they're queuing into who's around here, what's going on, all that kind of stuff. So scrapes, if I'm just starting to see them, they're going to start taking off here. But the whole point of why they make a scrape is to return to it. Okay? Because if
they're going to check.
Yep. If they never go back to that scrape, they don't know anything of the purpose of why they put it down to communicate, right? So they got to come back and they got to check that scrape and see who's laid down there scented. Okay, so What right now I would say through like the end of October, hunt scrapes. If you find scrapes, hunt them. As the season goes on towards that end of October and we're getting into that big time pre-rut, start figuring out what type of a scrape do you have. And there's really two different types of scrapes. One is just a pawing, where basically it's just like a frustration scrape. They just do a couple paws through it. He's amped up. He just wants to do something, and it doesn't really mean much.
So it's not going to be very big.
Not going to be very big, and it's not going to be very deep. Okay. Depth is often more of a calling card than the actual width of it. But don't get me wrong, the width can have a big time effect on it too.
Sure, because every new buck or doe that comes through is going to kind of widen it out, right? They're all going to take...
They could just be burrowing straight down too.
Okay.
Yep. So the ones where you start to see roots exposed and stuff like that because it's really getting deep into it, that means that that wasn't a one-time deal. They're coming back there.
Gotcha.
Okay. So hunt those ones where they start coming back there. And if you start seeing like droppings in a scrape, then they're really using that scrape. If you see fresh droppings in a scrape, like they're scenting that up like crazy because they didn't just randomly poop in a scrape. They did that on purpose.
Right.
So that's the kind that you want. That's more of the community-based scrape where everybody's really coming to it. So yeah, if you're going after a specific buck in mind, like you got this buck on camera and you're trying to kill this specific buck and you know his scrapes, yeah, well, hunt those scrapes.
Right.
Because he's going to return to those. But if you just want any deer, any buck, anything like that, find the community scrapes and sit on those because that's where they're all going to. Okay. So that's what I'm seeing is I just found yesterday on the 8th, I found my first fresh made scrape of the season. I actually posted a picture up on the Facebook page. So right now, like if you find a scrape, go after that scrape. Because it's so fresh and things are going to be coming back to it pretty regularly.
Gotcha.
Because I mean, if you just find like little pawings and stuff, be careful that you're not just finding feeding sign. Like if you're standing underneath an oak and it's dropped a bunch of acorns and there's a bunch of leaves strewn all over the place as they've been pawing through it to get to the acorns, that's not a scrape. Look for the dirt is like removed.
They've kind of
and you're down into it.
That deep layer, yeah.
Like a scrape, you can spot like a mile away because especially right now as the leaves are freshly falling, you're like the whole ground is the color of the leaves, right? The reds and the yellows and the oranges and everything, and then there's just this like black brown spot, and you're like
right in the middle, yeah.
Right, and as you go up to it, find the branch that's above it. And that once you see the dirt and then you have a branch right above it, you know you've got a scrape right here, and now figure out what type of scrape you have. So anyway, that's what I'm seeing. It's just kicking off. The fun is absolutely to come. We're not into the height of deer season yet. This isn't like whoop-de-doo. We got the best thing going right now. But it's certainly getting there.
Gotcha.
Seeing that sign gets me really excited because the bucks are starting to cue into that mood, and that's where we want them to go. We want them to get to that rut mentality.
Gotcha.
So hunt the scrapes, but also don't forget what the buck's main focus throughout this whole thing is going to be. Does. Okay? Does aren't going to move. So doe, when we talk about the rut and the deer are going wild and blah, 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 we're talking about bucks. Does are not going to move. Doe's priority is to have a safe place to raise their young. Period. That is their priority. So if they have that safe place that they live in, that they have food, water, and shelter, cover, right? That's all they need. The bucks come to them. They don't go to the bucks. Okay? The only time that you'll find a doe outside of her territory is when a buck runs her out. So that buck is chasing after her because bucks will start to chase does before they're even ready, before they're in heat. They'll just like be chasing them just because they're so amped up. And she's running away like, I'm not ready, get away from me. So a buck will run her away, but she's going to come back.
Right.
She's not going to stay wherever she got run out to. The only other time that a doe, you'll find them far away from where they are is if they got hunting pressured out of there. And sometimes they will shift because of hunting pressure, but they'll generally come back once that pressure leaves. And if you spook a doe, like a buck is going, if you spook a buck, like really spook him and he smells you, he's going to run a few hundred yards maybe and then start walking again. A doe is going to run for 3, 4, 5 miles before she stops. So those are the situations that you're going to run that you're not going to find a doe in their home area. So when you have if you've found does, and this could be doe tracks, and you got fresh scat and whatever, and you're in the does, do not forget that that's the whole point of what the bucks are trying to do. So
if you find does, the bucks are going to come to them.
Right. Exactly. So the best bait for a buck is a doe in heat. Okay. So when you can get to that moment and understand that that's the only thing that they're worried about, there's nothing wrong with being in a tree with a bunch of does walking underneath you, because that's where the buck is going to try to be too. So but that's a little bit further ahead. That's towards the actual rut. Right now, figure out where the does are. Keep that in the back of your mind. If you're hunting does, go after them. They're not going to move. Hunt the same spots that you've been hunting since the September 15th. If you're archery hunting for does, hunt those same spots, because the does are not moving far. And they'll stay in the same general patterns throughout this whole time. They'll get interrupted a lot during the rut because of the boys going through and being annoying, but they're not going to go too far. So that's pretty much my update on hunting season right now. Obviously bear bait's done. It's out of the realm of possibilities now, but bear season's still open. And bears are still focused on food right now because they just got to fatten up for the wintertime. So that's basically my update. So
appreciate it.
Anybody that's new to hunting, the summary of that is get out in the woods and find scrapes. I guess where to find scrapes, if you're scrapes being that community-based thing, how I look at it is concentrations of scent or concentrations of deer activity. So the saddles, the funnels that we've talked about in the past, those good feeding areas where there's a lot of food, they're going to lay down scrapes in those same general areas because they want to put a scrape near where this concentration of all this scent is, and so that they can lay down a scrape and sort through it all. So think about those areas where you're getting a large culmination of deer laying this scent around that's all over the place, and that buck wanting to just have it all be in his one place that you can go back to. So those funnels where deer walk through all the time, that food source that all the deer are going to still all the time, so I think of it as like a concentration of scent, but it's a concentration of deer, right? Think about it that way, and that's where you'll start to see those scrapes and those rub lines and stuff like that. So,
well, awesome.
Anything else that you can think of? Any questions that you have on that?
Just get in the woods and walk around. Just keep looking
in the right places.
Yeah. Using the tools that we've been going through.
The Onyx, everything like that. Yeah. Right now, I mean, be looking through. Bucks are gonna start moving a lot. So pinch points, saddles, like those paths of least resistance. Look for paths of least resistance because they don't want to go through the hard ridge line when they can dip through a nice saddle instead, right? But then look at like the edges of thick cover. Look at those swamps that are just so thick that you look at it and you go, nothing would ever want to go in there.
I don't want to go in there.
That's where that big buck is. He wants to go in there because he feels safe in there. But he may not lay down a scrape in there, but he'll put it out on the edge of it.
Right.
Okay. Those kinds of things. Again, there's probably going to be a game path along the edge of that swamp, and he's going to put down a scrape right near that game path. Or if you find like a bunch of game paths and they all converge in one spot, and there's no scrape there yet, wait. There's probably going to be one. If not this year, keep checking it year after year, because there's going to be a scrape there at some point, because they're all culminating in that one spot. Right. So those are the kinds of things that you want to think about. That's the mentality that you want to have. Yeah. Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Okay. So that's the update for now. If you guys have any questions, if you got stuff to add, we've already had a couple people comment on YouTube or Facebook and stuff like that about what they've been seeing out there too. So by all means, add what you're seeing too. A little bit of a touch on my last one where I got some information on the acorns. And I personally have more firsthand knowledge on the acorns here too. It's a weird elevation that is where the acorns are happening. So I've noticed, like, I've been hitting down in some river bottoms and not a single acorn dropped this year. Wow. Or if they did, it was a long time ago, because the acorns that were on the ground looked so rotten and old they could have been last year's.
I am so thankful that my oak tree is done, because they were hitting that metal roof and it was sounding like a gunshot, and it was every 30 seconds, bang, bang.
How was it sleeping with that?
It was not restful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Got a couple fans going, but I was outside today with a leaf blower just moving mounds. Took a snow shovel and shoveled up fresh acorns, and we're tossing them in the woods.
Right.
After I fell. And I was like, that is it.
Yeah.
I'm picking these up.
Yeah.
No. Boom.
So the like higher elevations, I mean, like you live on the side of a hill, right? So,
top of it. I'm up there.
Yep. So I had one guy say that I believe like 1,200 to 2,000 feet is where he's looking at, and he's seeing it. I might be wrong on the exact numbers on that, but that makes sense for the places that I had been prior to the last episode are in that range. So I'm like, oh, there's acorns everywhere. There isn't acorns everywhere, but if you're in the right
nice
elevation band, yes, there's good acorns there. And I am still listening to them fall. On Sunday I was in a spot and I was listening to them fall, and last night I was in a spot and I was listening to them falling still. So there's still trees out there that are dropping them. So they're still being picked up, and oddly enough, the scrape that I hunted over last night was right near a bunch of oaks, right? The concentration of scent on that food. So,
location.
There you go. Yeah. So please add your own stuff to it. That discussion, we want more of it. We want to hear from everybody. What are you seeing? And we can get that discussion up and try to help everybody out. So, I think that does it.
That does it.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode.